With his arms folded, Roger Waters remains motionless as a tempest gathers behind him. Track mixing is not his forte. He's combining fury. There are 5 groups. 5 terms he finds intolerable. Complete and utter contempt, not only a passing ill will. Everything that Roger Waters despises reverberates. Roger Waters became famous for his defiance. His music yelled out danger. Therefore, he is serious when he criticizes someone. In his opinion, these 5 groups compromise the essence of rock music. It should have been loud, raw, and honest. Who was the first? That one has followed him about like a ghost for decades. Unit 2. It all began with awe. The outcome was repulsive. U2 appeared in the early 18s to be Pink Floyd's political heir apparent. Stadiums full of people looking for significance, massive platforms, and profound themes. All it was to Waters, though, was rhetoric. He perceived Bono's lectures as meaningless performances, like sermons devoid of selflessness. He insisted the music was safe, sterilized, and overproduced. To what extent was he enraged? The acclaim. Those in the know have praised U2 as rock's moral compass. The Joshua Tree in the Wall, according to some fans. Waters considered it blasphemy. This guttural scream, this self-dissection, this cry from the vacuum was what he perceived the wall as. The Tree of Life? A commercial anthem procession attired in authenticity. Conscience was invisible to him. That was ego. Chauffeured by private planes to various charity events while encased in fancy eyewear. During a performance in London, things finally clicked. Went because I was curious. However, Bono got up, shook his head, and left the stage halfway through the set after delivering yet another grandstanding sermon about rescuing the planet. As he quietly made his exit, he mumbled something about how there was no fire and no smoke. A degree of disdain developed from what had begun as awe. The point of rock, according to Waters, was not to make you feel good about doing nothing. The point was for you to feel uneasy enough to take action. Will they be the following group? Those legendary figures who, in his view, sacrificed their souls for stadiums. Rock and roll. They went from being a band of outcasts to a household name. They were the 16ths that Waters admired. Everyone did, right? In their cracks were bravado, character, and peril. Chaos was made to sound cool by them. Something changed, though, as the years passed. Sharpness diminished. Tours were extremely popular. Amidst the flashy lighting sets and fancy goods, the message got buried. According to Waters, the Stones shifted their focus from questioning the world to capitalizing on it. What was once their genuine sound, the blues, became a robotic performance. The name Baby Lemonade eludes me. That time was practically the crowning glory of my life, you know? Presented in a commercially polished and nostalgic manner. Their prior selves were distorted representations in his eyes. Rock stars sacrificing authenticity for fame and fortune. It was driven by principle, not emotion. He thought they could be revolutionary, but all they did was sell ease. Records released later in their careers seemed to him like hollow reminders of their former greatness. There was actual, tangible friction, not only theoretical. During a European event in the 19th century, Waters allegedly got into an argument with the Rolling Stones crew about the order of performance and sound checks. Anger flared up when a Stones tour manager wrote off Waters, saying the audience wouldn't be interested in her political views. The vague hatch-ho remained with him. The distance became steadily colder after that. Send-outs were disregarded. Interviews were rife with indirect comments. Those in the know knew there was animosity between the two factions despite the fact that they never publicly fought. There was no hesitation in his response when asked if he would ever perform with them. He had no interest in performing in a circus. A revolution was his desire. What followed was the formation of what he dubbed the soundtrack to shopping malls. Arctic Monkeys. A little too hygienic, cautious, and cautious. Coldplay embodied all that Roger Waters thought rock music should not be. Music devoid of edge, emotionally flat, and too sanitized. For him, the sound was just packaging, not functionality. He openly despised elevator music and tech business advertisements that were designed to fit in with pop rock. He zeroed in on Coldplay because of their pastel aesthetic, dazzling optimism, and enormous pleasantness, which he found to be quite appealing. They were like a warm blanket on a chilly night, musical comfort, in his opinion. Their emptiness, not their fame, was what enraged him. Melancholic songs crafted for crowd participation but lacking substance. Waters saw indifference beneath their melodies, which were meant to promote solidarity. Lack of advantage. Do not feel rushed. Enjoyable background music for those who are too tired to pay attention. As the globe erupted in flames, corruption, and collapse, Coldplay remained ethereal, refusing to confront the anarchy or even mention any specific names. That was more like escapism than neutrality in Waters' view. Travesty of the original intent of music. Spark, jolt, pause. To him, Coldplay lacked spirit. He recognized tactic. Works of art cleaned, so they are safe to eat. Their songs were hardly anthems in his view. Those were the lullabies of a carefree age. Their music wasn't the only thing he rejected. He did not want to be part of the quiet it fostered. Will they be the following group? Who are these people he says killed legacy rock? Muse was a cautionary story to Waters, a band that had all they needed but never told the truth. Their performances were dazzling displays of light and sound, but he felt like they were soulless noise. The lack of content in their songs was what he perceived as the result of their image-heavy style. They skirted the edge of outright rebellion in their lyrics. Everything seemed secure. Cleverly, he claimed that they were trying to imitate Pink Floyd's ostentatious style. Massive orchestrations, dramatic climaxes, and ominous themes, but none of the raw feeling, agony, or blood that had previously driven his own compositions. Waters didn't consider rebellion a passing fad. The mark remained. Also, tension was building behind the scenes. Reportedly, Waters questioned Muse's main spot at a charity event where they were both set to perform. Their message, in his opinion, was insincere, without meriting the recognition accorded to musicians who convey meaningful messages. No one ever saw their teams fight in public, but rumors circulated about how irritated Waters was. Muse's oblique references to Floydian production values without Floydian profundity struck him as a form of ignorance masquerading as homage. Being adored was fine with Waters, but imitating without insight? That cannot be excused. Muse, in his view, represented a generation that cared more about how they seemed than how they sounded like revolutionaries. Who will be the last band? He went from being apathetic to enraged by that one. The band Imagine Dragons. Waters made a funny face when the interviewer brought them up. With malice. Can we honestly refer to this as a rock? He raised an eyebrow as if the question had just offended him. He compared Imagine Dragons to fast food in terms of their sound. Packed, predictable, and manufactured in large quantities to ensure optimum deliciousness. They personified the idea of a rebel without conscience. He claimed that the music that fills arenas but lacks substance is anthemic choruses devoid of conflict, booming tunes that have nothing to convey. To him, they were more of a brand than a band. A product adorned with neon signs and guitars, designed specifically for use in algorithmic contexts and halftime displays in guitar form. Imagine Dragons were a band that failed to stand for anything yet became ubiquitous, which resonated with Waters because his previous work had raged against war, spying, and insanity. They didn't merely pretend to have substance. That was the problem. His previous statement was that packaging noise as revolution is the worst thing that can happen. Not only did he despise them, but he also despised what they stood for, undermining the message to make it more marketable. Style triumphs over spirit. Their drum machine-driven music sounded like denial to him in a world engulfed in flames. More from music has always been what Roger Waters has desired. A greater amount of bravery, honesty, and fervor. Music wasn't just noise to him. It was a weapon, a scream, and a rhythmic wound. Confrontation, not entertainment, was the goal. He didn't think any of these 5 bands were particularly brilliant, but that wasn't the reason they failed. But they honed their sound, smoothed off their edges, and played it safe because they weren't brave enough or bloodied enough. For Waters, that constituted the pinnacle of treachery. Not genre-specific, yet functional. He recalled a time when rock music was more than simply art. It was a form of resistance, and when a song's lyrics could lead to a ban or ignite a debate in Parliament. The world was bestowed upon him with that. In exchange, he demands that. It wasn't about making headlines. Waters disliked because it mattered to him. Why? Because in his mind, art ought to pack a punch rather than a pad, and music ought to scream while society mumbles. That it should transform stages into arenas for combat rather than advertising spaces. Impact, not fame, was his goal. Fighters, not admirers, were his desire. He was more interested in march music than mall scores. Instead of teasing algorithms, the lyrics questioned authority. Furthermore, he is not seeking solace in his listening now. He longs for music that would awaken a world that is dormant, for truth that will sting, and for rebellion. The majority of what he hears lacks conviction, intensity, and clarity. The industry, in his opinion, became too silent just when the globe needed a rumble. Why? Because according to Roger Waters, music isn't music until it challenges something.